I joined the call because they were a prayer ministry, and they were praying for the ending of abortion in America, but also just for righteous government. And they were in D.C., and I'm like, I'm going to join them. I had just finished an internship with IHOP Kansas City, and I learned, yes, done it all. Just finished an internship with them, and I'm like, I know how to do this house of prayer thing. I know how to do this house of prayer thing. I've been leading 2-hour sets. I've been leading 2-hour sets for the past 6 months, and I got this. So I show up there, and they have worship tryouts, a lot different than the worship tryouts that we do here at Bethel, because everybody tried out. So I don't care. I don't care if you're a worship leader. I don't care. You're just going to sing. Isn't that terrifying? That's horrible. That's terrifying for me, and I'm a worship leader. So we all tried out, all like 80 of us, and they picked 4 leaders, and I was one of 4. I don't say that for you to congratulate me, but they decided very quickly that they wanted to do 24/7. Okay, so with 4 worship leaders, so yeah, with 4 worship leaders, if you can do math, which I can kind of do math, that means that I'm going to be leading worship for 6 hours a day, and that gets very tiring. But I'm like, I'm tough. I am strong and I'm tough. Okay, so it didn't take long. Before I reached the end of my earthly strength, and I ended up in San Francisco starting a house of prayer there, and I was the one of 2 worship leaders. Okay, so no, I did not lead a 12-hour worship set. I've done a 13-hour one once. And it makes for a great story, but there's nothing else great about it. I'm like, I held my pee for 13 hours. Yes, I did. Treasure in heaven. So we're in San Francisco, we're building a house of prayer, and I remember reaching the end. There's just me and this guitar player who was also a worship leader, and I'm hitting these keys, and I'm just like, God, I can't take this anymore. And I just like motion for the guitar player to keep going. And I get under the piano, and I'm just like I'm down on the ground, and I'm like, ah, ah, and I just start screaming and wailing. And it didn't matter, because if you've ever heard the call pray, or anybody from the call pray, they're all screaming and yelling, and so there's 7 of us all sobbing and snotting, and they don't know that I stopped playing the piano just to yell because I was pissed. They thought, oh, the Spirit is moving and she's feeling the travailing heart of Lord. And they just didn't notice. It just didn't matter how hardcore or noble I looked on the outside, because there was always someone who bested me. It was just this, I had Jessica just follow me everywhere. There was one day that I had played the keyboard so hard and so long that middle D snapped in half. And that's a real story. It snapped in half, and then randomly throughout the rest of my 6-hour set, it would just play. Just whenever I would feel like it. And I'm like, man, this must be strength, right? Look at that key. It's just snapped in half. This is the epitome of worship strength. And then the next day, we join up with this other house of prayer, and there's this guy who had the set before me. His name is Enrique, and he's pouring sweat. This guy is pouring sweat, as if like heaven itself was just dumping water on this man, and he's pouring sweat, and he's just going for it, and he's finishing up his 3 hours. And I looked down at the keyboard, and he had split 5 of his fingers open, and he had bled all over the keyboard. There was just blood all over this keyboard. And I'm like, you know what, Enrique? You couldn't let me have this one. Like, I split a key in half, you know? And you had to go and split 5 of your fingers open and bleed all over the keyboard. And it turns out he had been playing in his own blood for about an hour. I mean, have any of you ever done that? No. And I'm not saying that you should. But there's nothing more initially devastating to me than to realize I did not want to have what it takes to be noble, and I didn't even really know what that was. I didn't know what true strength was. What Stephanie said today in worship, it's not about the push. It's in your strength is in the position of your heart. And I got to this place, that under the keyboard place, where it was time to cry out. It wasn't time to quit. It was time to be like, God, I have come face to face with the fact that in my earthly strength, I just don't have what it takes. And just how painful that actually was. And that if I rely completely upon my earthly strength, I'm going to be completely confined to comparing myself to the Enriques and the Jessicas. I'm going to always compare myself to them. And I'm always going to fall short. But when I hit my limitations and I cry out instead of quit, then I'm going to tap into who I was destined and created to be that no one else on earth can be. That's when I'm going to get it. So I got to this place of barrenness before the Lord. There was no ponds to throw myself into, because if I did, people would be like, well, good for you. Good for you. There's just no fig leaves to sew together for me to hide my weakness and my limits. Because God's invitation to greatness and nobility and strength is an internal one, and it's an eternal one. Because I realized very quickly, nobody will actually ever know in me in the fullness if I'm operating out, actually the way God intends for me to operate. That is between me and the Lord. That's between me and the Lord. That's between you and the Lord. It's actually not between you and everybody else. It's because some of you are incredibly gifted, and you literally could just ride your whole life on your gift because you're the Jessica. Or you're the Enrique. You're the best of the best. But nobody knows that you haven't let God take over. You haven't let God actually make you great.